Never has a Jehovah's Witness thought that they were in a cult. I know I didn't when I was one. But how would you know you were in a cult? Any cult for that matter. After all, you would be under mind control.
I'm changing my life and I won't look back ever again.
Most witnesses think of cults as small groups that have one leader. They live on a compound in the middle of nowhere, which is a very common thought or common conception of what a cult is. The first thing Jehovah's Witnesses will say is, we don't have one leader. We have 8 or 9 or 10 or however there are at any given time. As of the recording of this, there's 9 leaders at the top. So they would say, well, we don't have one leader. Cults have one leader. Or they'll say, Jesus is our leader. The governing body, the leaders at the top, are just God's mouthpiece or God's channel on earth. But as it turns out, none of this is true. A quick Google search will let you know cults don't have to have just one leader, and they can be living in plain sight amongst the public. Notice what the author Stephen Hassan has to say about this in his book, Combating Cult Mind Control. He's a world-renowned expert in cults. This is the 2018 edition, and on page 26, while talking about different cults and also some unknown cults, in contrast, he says, still others such as Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons have been highly visible for many decades. In this same book, page 82, it reads, when I call a cult destructive, I do so because it meets the specific criteria described in detail in the next chapter of this book. Briefly, a destructive cult is a group that violates its members' rights and damages them through the abusive techniques of unethical mind control. It distinguishes itself from a normal, healthy, social, or religious group by subjecting its members to systematic control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions to keep them dependent and obedient. The BITE model, as he talks about, stands for behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. We're going to be talking about this more later in the video. This book is also available on audio, and that's how I went through the book, is I listened to it on audio, but I also have a physical copy of it. The book is fascinating, but just listen to what the author says on page 81. Since all destructive cults believe that their ends justify any means, no matter how harmful, they typically believe themselves to be above the law. As long as they believe that what they are doing is right and just, many of them feel justified to lie, steal, cheat, or to use any and all forms of undue influence to accomplish their ends. They routinely violate, in the most profound and fundamental way, the civil and religious liberties of the people they recruit. They turn unsuspecting people into slaves. Oh my goodness, there's so much to unpack here. First off, when it says they typically believe themselves to be above the law, and as long as they believe that what they are doing is right and just, many of them feel justified to lie. It reminded me of the Jehovah's Witness attorney lying in a Canada courtroom, and governing body Jeffrey Jackson lying in court at the Australian Royal Commission when he was on the stand. Take a look.
As the meeting progressed with Mr. Wall, the elders came to the decision that Mr. Wall was not sufficiently repentant for his disgraceful conduct, and the congregation elders took the decision to disfellowship him. That word is used by Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses don't use the word shun or shunning. They refer to it as disfellowship, disfellowshipping, disfellowshipped, because that really gives the sense of what's taking place within this particular religious community. Disfellowship literally means no further spiritual fellowship with the individual. And as I point out, sorry, Chief Justice, as I point out at paragraph 22 of my factum, the nature of the relationship then of a disfellowship person is not completely shunned. The disfellowship person is able to come into the congregation, to the congregation meetings. They're able to attend in the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're able to sit wherever they like. They can sing the spiritual songs with the congregation. As far as their family members are concerned, normal family relations continue with the exception of spiritual fellowship.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
Now, when the author said they routinely violate in the most profound and fundamental way the civil and religious liberties of the people they recruit, it reminded me of how Jehovah's Witnesses have always bragged about how much they have fought for religious freedom in the courts, and yet they do not allow for religious freedom in their own culture. If someone chooses to walk away from that religion, or they've committed a sin in the eyes of the church, they are punished severely. They don't let anyone associate with them or talk to them. They violate their human rights to love and be loved. That's not religious freedom, folks. Finally, that last part of the paragraph said, they turn unsuspecting people into slaves. How many times was it drilled into us that we were good-for-nothing slaves? They would literally say that. They would say that over and over. We had to always slave for the corporation and sell their books and their magazines and take part in recruiting others into the organization. In later years, they stopped charging for the literature, but you still had to peddle it and try to get it out there to everybody. Think of how many people got roped into working at the headquarters.
Ambitious guy like you, fast way to get to headquarters.
Or using their time and skills to build kingdom halls and the never-ending construction projects they have going on. All in the name of Jesus or Jehovah, when in reality, all who really profits from it is the Watchtower. I thought this was an interesting paragraph on page 93 where it said, people at the top of these organizations do not lead through wisdom, consensus, compassion, or even brain power. They lead by making their followers frightened and dependent. They demand obedience and subservience. They often require their followers to dress, act, and think exactly alike. Let's talk about this. People at the top of these organizations do not lead through wisdom, consensus, compassion, or even brain power.
And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible. And so it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction. The brothers do the best they can with what they have and what they understand at the time.
They lead by making their followers frightened and dependent. They demand obedience and subservience.
Your faith has led you here as loyal servants of Jehovah, confident that Psalm 97, verse 10, applies to you personally. Jehovah is guarding the lives of his loyal ones.
Where are they? Check the basement. Shut that door. Of course, all of us should remember that our everlasting welfare will depend on our willingness to listen and obey.
They often require their followers to dress, act, and think exactly alike. Sound familiar? They force unity on us like no other. Got to conform, got to look the same way, got to think the same way.
As the Apostle Paul expressed it, we are united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. To preserve our unity, we need to focus not on how we are different from one another, but how we are the same.
Independent thinking was a no-no. If you disagreed with anything the governing body said, you would be marked or maybe even disfellowshipped.
So let's now discuss 4 areas where we especially need to guard and protect our Christian unity. The first is our response to direction from Jehovah's organization.
You had to think and agree 100% with the group, or you would be squeezed out like a tube of toothpaste.
The toothpaste prisoner needs to be squeezed every now and then, or else he forgets to keep confessing.
Now, getting back to the BITE model that Stephen Hassan came up with, behavioral, information, thought, and emotion control, I highly encourage you to go look that up and study what is entailed in that. To be in a cult, you don't have to check every single box on there. But you will find that the witnesses check a heck of a lot of them, and that's why he includes them as a cult. I'm just going to go over a very few here because there's just time doesn't allow for a whole lot. But starting with the behavior control, it says number 4 here, control types of clothing and hairstyles. Major time spent with group indoctrination. I mean, think of all the times you're at meetings and service, just constant indoctrination. Rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. Yes. Discourage individualism, encourage group think. Absolutely. Impose rigid rules and regulations. Absolutely. Number 18, instill dependency and obedience. 23, separation of families. There's a big one. They love separating families. Moving on to information control. Minimize or discourage access to non-cult sources of information, including internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, magazines, media. There you go. They don't want you reading anything but their own literature, and there's a reason for it, folks. Critical information. They want to limit or discourage you access to critical information. Or, letter C, former members. Yeah, can't talk to former members. They might be apostate. If they have anything critical or negative to say, can't listen to them. Keep members busy so they don't have time to think and investigate. How many times did you feel you were on this constant hamster wheel of going to the meetings, going in service, studying, trying to get your hours, trying to do more, volunteer here, volunteer there. They want to keep you busy for a reason. Don't slow down because you might learn something. Compartmentalize information into outsider versus insider doctrines. Ensure that information is not freely accessible. Control information at different levels and missions within the group. That's for sure. Elders have access to other information than the regular rank and file. Number 4, encourage spying on other members. Absolutely. Did you ever get told on? Did anybody ever go to the elders about something you did? That was common practice. Yeah, it says here, report deviant thoughts, feelings, or actions to leadership. Ensure that individual behavior is monitored by group. So yeah, check that box. Extensive use of cult-generated information and propaganda, including newsletters, magazines, journals, audio tapes, videotapes, YouTube, movies, and other media. Again, extensive use of cult-generated information and propaganda. How much freaking literature did they pump out to us? Yeah, and then now they've got JW Broadcasting they pump out all the time. Misquoting statements or using them out of context from non-cult sources. That has been known, that has happened many times. They'll quote what appears to be like a scientist, they'll quote a scientist, take his quote totally out of context of what he said in his original writing and misapply it to their magazine. Unethical use of confession and withholding forgiveness or absolution. How many people were disfellowshipped because they were deemed unrepentant? Moving on to thought control. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. Whoa, that's a big one. We were told that they referred to the religion all the time as the truth. The truth. Adopting the group's map of reality as reality. Instill black and white thinking. Decide between good versus evil. Organize people into us versus them. Insider versus outsiders. Oh, yeah. It was always Jehovah's Witnesses and versus the world. And the world was always against, it was drilled into us that the world was against Jehovah's Witnesses. Very much us versus them mentality and good versus evil. Use of loaded language and cliches, which constrict knowledge, stop critical thoughts, and reduce complexities into buzzwords. Best life ever! Best life ever! Remember those stupid cliches? Oh, and there's a ton more. Encourage only good and proper thoughts according to their parameters. Rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, constructive criticism. They couldn't take any constructive criticism, that organization. Elders, the governing body, no constructive criticism. Questions about leader and doctrine or policy allowed. That is absolutely true. Not allowed to question them. That's how I got in trouble when I had questioned the leadership of why they were pushing the vaccine. Got in trouble for that. Not allowed. Labeling alternative belief systems as illegitimate, evil, or not useful. So anything outside the JW world, that is definitely labeled evil, wrong thinking, not useful. Only their literature, only their thoughts are important. Yeah, so check that box. Check that box right there. Moving on to emotional control. Promote feelings of guilt or unworthiness. And then it has a whole list here. I'm not even going to go into it. But how many times did you not feel worthy enough or good enough? How many times did you feel you were not doing enough for the cult? Number 5 here, instill fear, such as fear of thinking independently. Ooh, yeah, don't do that. The outside world. Scary. They make it seem so scary, the outside world. Enemies. Losing one's salvation. Oh my God, you're going to lose your life. You won't be able to live in the new system. You won't be able to live in paradise. You might be destroyed at Armageddon. You'll lose your salvation. Yep, check that box. Leaving or being shunned by the group. Yes. They instill fear that you will be shunned by the group. Others, disapproval. Love bombing and praise one moment and then declaring you a horrible sinner the next moment. Yeah, check that box. That's appropriate. They do that. Phobia indoctrination, inculcating irrational fears about leaving the group or questioning the leader's authority. Absolutely check right there. Yeah, the no happiness or fulfillment is possible outside of the group. Yes, that is instilled in every Jehovah's Witness. Terrible consequences if you are to leave. Yeah, they'll make it sound like you're going to end up in a ditch with a needle in your arm somewhere, or, everything bad's going to happen to you. By the way, it's not true. Shunning of those who leave. Fear of being rejected by friends and family. Check, they do that. Never a legitimate reason to leave. Those who leave are weak or undisciplined, unspiritual, worldly, brainwashed by family or a counselor, or seduced by money, sex, or rock and roll. Check. You can see why Stephen Hassan includes Jehovah's Witnesses as a cult in his book. Folks, if you are a Jehovah's Witness, don't be afraid to peek behind the curtain. Have a great day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Together we can help a lot of people. Mwah! See you on the next video.
I'm changing my life and I won't look back ever again.